stories about water and urban places. This is Ideanthro. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. In today's episode, I would like to expand on a topic that we have discussed a couple of times over the past 12 months here on Ideanthro. Specifically, that was in episode 172 and episode 243. And that has to do with when does moss, and potentially algae, but we're talking about moss particularly today, when does it like to grow in bioretention systems? Now, moss and algae have long been understood to be indicators of clogging within bioretention systems, of bioretention systems that are too wet. But in episode 172, I identified, I believe for the first time, that sunlight also plays a really important function in whether or not moss, and at the time in that episode, I accidentally called it algae, but it is moss in that episode and in today's episode. I identified the role that sunlight plays in when moss will and won't grow in bioretention systems. And specifically, it was a case of it only seemed to grow when A, there was sufficient moisture for it to grow, and B, critically, when there was sufficient sunlight. When an area was either shaded by the leaves of a tree or the leaves of a lomandra like this, or where there was leaf drop on the ground, or potentially with some allelopathy going on from the plants. But whenever there was either shade or leaf drop, for sure, obscuring the sunlight from the surface, the moss didn't want to grow. Now today, I have spent the morning out at the Wakeley Bioretention System because we're filming for our upcoming bioretention training called Bioretention in the Real World, which is all about gaining a practical understanding of bioretention systems as systems, not as isolated components, because you have to understand them and manage them as systems, which is exactly what we're talking about here, right? What is the system that relates the filter media, the moisture, the moss, the sunlight, the plants? Been filming for that, and I just saw a great example. I'm finally getting around to the episode here. Sorry for the long intro. And I just saw a great example of this interplay between light and moisture and moss and filter media. So let me run you through it. I'm standing in front of it here, but I'm going to show you a photograph. So here is the photo. What you need to know is this is a large bioretention system. It's on a large catchment, and it rained yesterday. So there's a bit of water trickling in here, but it's not it's not a large rainfall event. So it hasn't just filled up the whole system. It's just been slowly trickling in the inlet. So you can see that water towards the left of shot for you. But what we can also see here is, let's move from left to right. We go batter, water, free filter media not underneath the canopy, then free filter media on the right underneath the canopy. And in terms of the moss, what we see happen here is top of batter, none, presumably a little bit too dry. Low down on the batter, near the edge of the water but not in the water, some. We've got some moss growing there. Then we move into the water. And what you've got to realize here is that yes, there's definitely water here right now because it's rained, but this system has a big catchment and it is prone to getting some base flows through it. It's more common than not to come out here and to find water trickling into this system. So recognize that where you're seeing water extends to here, yeah, okay, it's here right now because it's rained overnight, but it's probably pretty common for there to be some level of water wanting to pond there, even in the tiniest bits of rain and hanging around afterwards due to base flow. So we've come down the batter, we've gone no moss, and we've got low on the batter and got moss. Then we get to this water, no moss. Coming to the other side of it, we have free filter media with no canopy, and we have lots of moss. We move a little bit further to the side and get the first bit of filter media that's underneath canopy, but it's still got lots of sunlight coming in from one side. Little bit of moss. Then we move right under the canopy, no moss. And what I believe this strongly suggests, but doesn't prove, because it's very hard to prove anything in this world, strongly suggests but doesn't prove, is the relationship at play here. Up the batter, it's too dry for the moss to grow there. Just doesn't want to go there, not enough moisture. Comes down the batter and we get enough moisture, and on the batter there's no canopy, so there's also enough sunlight. So we've hit the critical mass for both of those, and we've got the moss there. We then step down into where there's water, and it's standing water, and it's too wet for it. So there's the right amount of sunlight most likely, but it's too wet for it. We then come out, moving right in your photograph, and we come to the moss where there is most moss, and we're in the filter media, good amounts of moisture in there. There's also plenty of sunlight because there's no canopy, so we've met the critical thresholds of both sunlight and moisture without exceeding either of them. We then step a little bit further to the right, and we're starting to reduce the sunlight, but not necessarily the moisture content. So we have less moss here, and we go under the canopy and there's none. So I believe this really clearly demonstrates that moss has two particular limiting factors in bioretention systems: presence of sunlight and sufficient moisture. I don't believe it has to be that much moisture based on some other observations that I've made, but for now, in this episode, let's leave that there, because what this really sends us towards is, if we do think that moss in bioretention is a problem, we have something that's a really obvious management method, and that is stop the sunlight getting in. And the great thing about that is that stopping the sunlight getting in is exactly what you should be doing to manage weeds anyway. So it shouldn't be much extra effort at all to manage moss, if you're concerned about it, than it is to manage any other weeds getting into bioretention. Sweet, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time, and check out our training once it is available. It's not quite there yet. Before you go, our best episodes come from your questions. This knowledge base, these discussions that are Ideanthro, improve with your contribution. So if there's a topic, an idea, a concept that you would like us to explore, come and ask us. You know where to find us. www.ideanthro.com/contact. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and that place you get your good podcasts from. You know where to find us. We look forward to hearing from you. We'll see you soon.